Question for anybody. So the least experienced criminal defense attorneys are the ones that are taking these $40 per hour cases?
Not necessarily the least experienced.
I didn't say worst, I least experienced.
Right. We get a lot of attorneys right out of law school that do it for a couple of years for the experience of doing it, and then they move on. I think the concern that's being raised is with those attorneys that have stayed on year after year after year after year in practice. I think there's the additional concern, and Reverend Jones raised it well, is that, again, if we look at what the state pays attorneys to represent a whole panoply of cases, from representing legislators to representing state officials, etc., no one is paid as low as $40 an hour. That's only to represent the poor. And it's in only those cases where the poor can lose their liberty, which should be, for us, a paramount concern. And so, once again, it's how we think of the poor, not only in this state, but in this country.
To give an idea to support what Nick and Eric are sharing, once in a while, the local public defender's office will contact me. They'll call and say, Rick, we just don't have anyone who can take this case. Would you do us the favor? And
that individual is most often charged with what type of crime, sir? I'm just trying to get a context.
Well, I was a public defender for 13 years. I've represented everyone from, OWI to homicide. So I'm certified to handle any type of case. And I've handled juvenile cases, misdemeanors, felonies, different types. So, and it's really just a favor to an agency that was pretty good to me. And I can do that more so than Eric ever could. I have a full salary where I'm a pastor of a church. My church takes very good care of me and my family. So I can do that favor. And then the money that I receive, I then take that money and I bless some family with it, or individuals, or the church, or I don't need the money. But I don't have overhead concerns. It's just me. I work out of my office, out of my home. It's just me. And really, I don't do it for the money. I simply do it as a favor.
Eric, you were going to say something on this issue?
I just wanted to make the point that the $40 an hour that we're talking about, that applies regardless of the type of charge. So we're not talking about a misdemeanor theft or domestic violence where you really don't need a great deal of experience necessarily to handle those types of cases. We're also talking about the homicides, the sexual assaults, potentially an embezzlement or forgery, cases that can be very complicated. And I too, I'll handle cases for free, but I don't use the vehicle of the public defender's office appointments because, again, I don't want to contribute to a system that pays lawyers in a way that it's very difficult to find, to place that burden solely on one part of the justice system. We don't pay police officers like that. We don't pay prosecutors like that, corrections officials, judges, court reporters. That burden's placed on the defense bar.
Nick, are the income rules the same whether you're charged with OWI or homicide?
Absolutely.
They're the same?
You mean to qualify?
Yeah, to qualify.
No, they're a little bit different. I'm sorry, I thought you meant do we pay the private bar the same?
No.
Depending on the case. So for the more serious case, a felony, let's say, where you have an individual with 2 children, if you're making $300 a week, you won't qualify.
Felony, 2 children, $300 a week?
You're not going to qualify.
And what is that person told? Sorry, go where?
Well, now what we say is, I'm sorry you don't qualify for the public defender's office, but we'll ask the judge to make a dean appointment.
Okay.
And
someone with a private bar.
So, the county will appoint at the private bar. Now, understand what's happening. With the cost, every county has to set up their own evaluation system. It used to be just us. We do it. And now each county has their own eligibility system. And the judge has to take time. Prosecutors have to take time while now the county assesses whether this person should receive an attorney. And then they have to make an appointment. And then the county pays for that.
And the simple reality is that the the cases have become more complex with time. Since the last time it was evaluated, you can take a look at, say, a 1968 statute book that has the criminal code and look at it today. It has quadrupled in size, and we're talking about DNA cases now. We're talking about sometimes electronic intercept cases. You're oftentimes intersecting both state and federal laws and having joint prosecutions, investigations, things of that nature. It's a much more complex world, and we don't even mention the role that the defense bar and public defenders play in children's court actions. Which is an enormous and very, very important field of representation as well. We spend about 1/3 of our office resources go into CHIPS, which are Children in Need of Protective Services, termination of parental rights, and delinquency actions. Those are the individuals that will be costing us $2 billion in the future unless we make the right choices at that level. And again, having effective representation, skilled litigators, skilled attorneys, making insightful judgments on how those children are processed through that system can make all the difference in the world.
Well, Nick, you spent a lot of the time in the Capitol lobbying on this issue. You had it added to the budget last summer. It was vetoed. Why was it vetoed?
From my understanding is it was vetoed as part of the whole budget package, but we were told informally that if it came as a separate bill, it would be considered on its own merits.
Well, okay, now you're pushing it as a separate bill. It passed the Senate by a vote of overwhelmingly?
Overwhelmingly.
Overwhelming.
Bipartisan.
Do you have an understanding that it's going to come up in the Assembly?
Yes, the Assembly is going to take it up, I understand, either on the 16th of this month or on the 18th. No, maybe the 24th, the 16th or the 24th of this month.
Now I want to turn a corner. What difference in our current, I hear you gentlemen say it's a broken system, what difference will this bill make? What's in it?
Well, let me take a shot first because I want to jump on something John, or
Please
support
do.
something John said. Not only will it mean a savings to taxpayers across the board. Right now, counties are paying over $7.6 million a year not to have the public defender do it. If the public defender did it, the overall cost per year would be, I think it's something like $4.6 million.
4.1 is in, well, anyway, more than 4
million, right.
Okay.
So there's a savings immediately to taxpayers. And as a taxpayer, I don't care if I'm making a savings paying my taxes to the county or paying them to the state. It's a savings to me. But the other thing is, if you have a professional defense bar doing these cases on a regular basis, as John points out, it even helps to reduce crime because we're spending time looking at each individual case. Most of those, I mean, very few cases, as John says, are the serious cases. Of the 142,000 cases, less than 20% were felonies. And of those felonies, a very small percent were the serious felonies. So it helps reduce crime. It saves money. It adds equal protection from county to county. And the bill stands up for the poor people. When the Senate voted for it, they stood up for Wisconsin's poor.
And the impact of this change on Milwaukee County, John?
It's been very positive in terms of the collaborative efforts that the defense bar and the public defenders have had on identifying issues early on and then dealing with them. We've set up a drug treatment court just in the last year. We've initiated a very aggressive deferred prosecution program, which is predicated on a risk-need assessment. In other words, we do the risk assessment, the public defenders do the needs assessment, and then we come together and we say, let's structure a resolution here that doesn't overemphasize jail and prison, but instead works on changing the behaviors. And what we've seen is thousands of individuals that have been kept accountably in the community with a significant reduction in violent crime. We have the lowest violent crime rates in the city of Milwaukee since the 1980s. And that means we've put fewer people in jail, fewer people in prison. And one of the reasons we can do that is with the savings in resources and time, we focus more aggressively then on that smaller percentage of individuals that we know are going to create the bigger problem. The gang members, the violent gang members, those who use firearms, and those who are sexually violent offenders. Those are the individuals that are going to get more of our resources now, and hopefully we identify them quicker. But one thing that has to be mentioned is as we do these more progressive strategies, you don't get credit for it. That's the problem with it. We still have a system that credits, how how many people did you churn through the system, not how many people did you prevent from staying in the system. And so that's one of the arguments we have to make jointly, is that we are actually making people safer by dealing with problems earlier on, and we're saving the taxpayers enormous amounts of money, and we're stabilizing and making safer their neighborhoods. That's why I'm here today, because I believe that what we're doing in Milwaukee could be replicated throughout this state and actually save resources for the state, reduce the number of people we're putting into the prison system, and ultimately, again, make this a safer community.